trapped in a new world of Street Fighter 3. The third chapter, so what's it gonna be? You're trapped in a new world of Street Fighter 3. Make your first move, so what's it gonna be? You're trapped in a new world of Street Fighter 3. The third chapter, so what's it gonna be? The third strike, y'all, is Street Fighter 3.
Rap music. Why? Just why? Welcome, my friends, to Street Fighter 3. Originally released at the tail end of the century, it came in 3 versions: Street Fighter 3, Double Impact, and Third Strike, which is the version we'll be looking at off the PS2 Street Fighter Anniversary Collection. As far as my knowledge goes, until the release of the Street Fighter 30th Anniversary Collection next year, the original version of Street Fighter 3 has never been released outside of arcades, and Double Impact got a limited release on the Dreamcast, which means that it's expensive. So is Third Strike for the Dreamcast, by the way, but you can access this version by just purchasing it online for PS3 and Xbox Live, but you're better off just waiting for the collection next year. A shame, really. I would have liked to be able to play the first 2 versions of Street Fighter 3 and see what was different. In fact, the opening says, "The epic trilogy unfolds." Is that a reference to Street Fighter 1, 2, and 3? Or all 3 versions of Street Fighter 3, which basically form a trilogy? So the story of Street Fighter 3 is that after Bison fell in Street Fighter 2, later retconned to be Street Fighter 5, but that's another story, a new organization called the Illuminati, led by a man named Gil, seeks to unite the world in a utopia. Street Fighter 3 is actually led mostly by a new cast of characters. In a rather bold move, very few returning characters return for this game. In the original version of the game, only Ryu and Ken returned. Double Impact added Akuma, while Third Strike added Chun-Li. We have a bunch of new characters. The lead character is Alex, who is a grappler kind of fighter. There's Ibuki, who is a ninja, who's a lot of fun to use. There's Dudley, who is a boxer like Balrog, but he's much more refined because, he's British.
Let's fight like gentlemen.
The siblings Yun and Yang, because apparently the name Yin was too obvious. Necro, a guy who was pretty much this game's replacement for Dalsim. I don't know what's up with that little girl that shows up whenever he does. There's Sean, who's pretty much the Sakura to Ken as he takes him on as an apprentice. There's Oro, a very old man who wears one arm in a cast. He seems a little perverted based on his interaction with Ibuki. Japan loves the dirty old master trope, don't they? There's Elena, the rep of the cast introduced in the original Street Fighter 3. She is an African princess and a very gracious dancer. Double Impact added 2 new characters. Hugo, who just looks very weird to me. I mean, just look at the guy. Urine. This is a weird name to pronounce. I mean, we all know what that sounds like, but he is in Street Fighter 5. He's Gil's brother, and while Gil has powers over fire and ice, Urien has power over earth and lightning, but he is much more evil than Gil. Introduced in Third Strike, we have Remy, who is basically this game's version of Guile. Q, a mysterious trenchcoat character who I found annoying to use. Makoto, who is a young karate enthusiast. And finally 12, who is just kinda... I don't even know what he is. So that's the cast of Street Fighter 3. I think that the decision to go with new characters, while controversial at the time, was a bold move. You wanted to show it was a new generation, so using new characters was a good way to do that. I don't know what the old characters are up to. Maybe that's why they don't make a game set after 3, because then they'd have to explain where Guile, Honda, and all those other characters were during this game. Hopefully 6 is set after 3, there's really no other way around it. Now for the presentation of the game. Let me just say that these sprites are amazing. So crisp and so beautiful. Everything about them just visually pops. There's new additions, for example. If felled by a weak attack, the character will just casually drop to the ground. I love that addition. The music I've already talked about, but I will admit that the focus on jazz and other styles does give 3 its own identity compared to previous entries in the series. I love the backgrounds. Street Fighter has always had good backgrounds, but they are beautiful in this game. Now for the gameplay. Of course it sticks to what worked with 2, but this game is such a different beast mechanically. You can now dash by pressing forward twice for starters, while Alpha 3 had a guard meter which told you when you could break an enemy open. 3 has a stun meter that tells you when your character is getting close to being stunned. You can block as usual, but 3's big draw is the parry maneuver. By pressing forward at the exact right moment, you can parry an opponent's attack and counter it. I was able to do it most often in the Parry the Ball minigame, which seems specifically designed to allow players to learn how to parry. Some people have pulled off amazing things with the parry maneuver. but I haven't been able to master it just yet. With the Super Meter, you have to choose which one of 3 that you want. I preferred Alpha's way of giving you all 3, but you just choose which one you'd like to use. It was more, how shall I say, strategic that way. Unlike in Alpha 3, your meter doesn't start out already filled out, but the first hit will reward you with a bar of meter. Each one has varying levels. Some only have 1, others go all the way up to 3, depending on how powerful the move is. You can also perform EX moves, more powerful versions of the special moves, though as far as I can tell, it depends on what super you choose for your character. I just love how each blow feels. You really feel the damage. They're all mostly quarter circle this time around, which makes them easier to use. It's best to wait till your opponent's life gauge turns orange. That's when you can attack. One thing I noticed was that in the case of a double KO, it'll go to Judgment if it's for the round victory. I didn't even expect that. What I do love about arcade mode is that it lets you choose what opponent you want to fight, so in case you're having trouble with one fighter, you can choose somebody else. It even tells you what time of day you're at, which is just amusing for some reason. Before the boss, everybody has a rival battle, which is a nice way to mix things up. But then that brings you to the final boss, Gil. Gil doesn't even wear clothes, but damn if he isn't intimidating. Just look at that body. He's all about zoning, and using whatever element is facing you against you. Of course, as before, adaptability is the key here. If his super meter is filled when you beat him, he will resurrect himself. Of course, you can hit him while he's doing this to interrupt his life regain. Eventually you'll wear him down and will ultimately knock him out. The endings are very stylish and beautiful. The picture actually moves while the characters talk about their struggles and hardships. In fact, I've heard Third Strike's endings are more of a follow-up to the original Double Impact's endings, which is why I would have really liked to have captured those endings. Maybe when the collection comes out next year, I'll do an update to this video. There's not a lot to say about them personally, but I just love the way they look. Street Fighter 3 is a fan favorite among many. I can see why with its crisp presentation, fun involving gameplay, and a memorable and bold roster of characters. I would recommend playing this if you feel like going on a Street Fighter binge. But after this, Street Fighter hit a bit of a snag. For nearly 10 years, there was no sign of a new Street Fighter game. It seemed the series was dead in the water, but in 2007, that changed. Join me next time, we'll be looking at Street Fighter 4. Thanks for watching. If you liked the video, please hit that subscribe button. See you later!